So Japan and South Korea trade road has begun biting into the pockets of many economies, not only limited to South Korea and Japan. Let's get an expert's view. We have on the line live with us Zeremy Zook, Associate Director of Asian Sovereign Ratings at Fitch Ratings. Zeremy, I know it's very early there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Now, as an analyst of this region, what's your take on the ongoing trade row between South Korea and Japan?
Well, I think this ongoing trade row really represents that there are geopolitical tensions throughout the region that can arise from time to time. And these ongoing tensions, of course, can have impacts on economic growth and relationships between countries. And these are things that we try to factor into our ratings when we look at the sovereign ratings of each particular country. So in general, we already have accounted for a large amount of possible geopolitical risk, particularly in this region. That being said, an ongoing trade dispute between South Korea and Japan could begin to weigh on economic growth in both of these countries, which would have follow-through impacts possible follow-through impacts to our ratings. Although I think that this would require quite a significant slowdown in growth and a persistent slowdown in growth, which I don't necessarily see coming from this particular trade row. But I think, the general sense is that this just represents that there are underlying tensions throughout the region, not only between Japan and South Korea, that could pop up from time to time and have an impact on our sovereign credit outlooks.
Right. So you just said that you have accounted these factors into your outlook. So what is your current outlook for the South Korean economy, Japanese economy, and the wider Asia-Pacific region?
Yeah, so for the wider Asia-Pacific region, of course, it's dealing with ongoing headwinds from both a slowing Chinese economy and a global economy more broadly. And so as being a very export-oriented region, this has been biting on growth in many countries throughout the region. And this is the case really for South Korea. We revised our South Korea growth outlook in June to 2% growth for the year, rebounding up to 2.6% for next year. Again, a lot of this is to do with the semiconductor cycle, which has been hit quite hard from the slowing global economy, and this has spilled over to not just South Korea's exports outlook, but the investment outlook within Korea. For Japan, we have growth broadly stable relative to last year, but slowing going into next year, again on the back of a lot of these global headwinds from the slowing economy. So you already have these two countries in the region more broadly dealing with a number of challenges, and I think this trade row between South Korea and Japan simply adds to the headwinds for the region.
Right. So, Zeremy, what are the implications on the two Asian economies as well as the global economy should the Seoul-Tokyo trade spat persist? I mean, many here or in Japan as well expect Japan to put additional pressure on South Korea by removing Seoul from its white list of trade-favored countries, which means the export restrictions will not be limited to 3 items in the semiconductor-related fields, but it spans out to be more than 100 items.
Yeah, no, I mean, the removal of South Korea from Japan's white list would be, an escalation that would have most likely broader impacts. Of course, it's difficult to tell at this point exactly what the full implications of this will be. These aren't full export bans or anything. These are export restrictions, which will certainly make it significantly more cumbersome for Japan to export products to Korea. And so in that sense, for Korean producers, it will be negative as it will take, there will be less certainty. It will take longer for them to receive their inputs. And so going forward, we would expect that if this trade row were to drag on significantly, you would likely see a lot of these Korean producers look elsewhere for their inputs, and there would be some shift in the supply chain. And it's really sort of that middle period where firms have run through their inventories that they currently have and then begin to look for alternative producers or suppliers for their inputs. And so that could have impacts not just for Korean firms, but for Japanese exporters as well. Our view is that Japanese exporters could be hit by this, given that they will have to find alternative destinations for their products if this trade dispute does escalate further, and we were to see Korean firms start to look elsewhere.
Absolutely. We'll have to wait and see how this pans out. Zeremy Zook, Associate Director of Asian Sovereign Ratings at Fitch Ratings, many thanks this morning for your insights today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.